39 days, 20 castaways, 2 tribes, and 1 survivor. This is Essential Fans versus Favorites. I'm your host, Jessica, originally from Season 7, Anarchy, followed by my co-host, Kim, who played in both Seasons 2, Brazil, and Season 6, All-Stars.
Hi.
And lastly, we have our special guest, Bandit, who played in Season 3, Toko, and is a member of the executive hosting team.
Hey, y'all.
So before we get started, I just want to say how excited I am to finally have this podcast as a part of the Essential community. I know it's been talked about for a while, so to finally be able to get this going is really an honor, and I'm excited to see what we can come up with this season. So without further ado, let's dive on into Season 10, Fans versus Favorites. So let's start with the theme of the season, which is fans versus favorites. So this is a staple when it comes to Survivor. They started it in season 16 with Micronesia, and it was a hit right off the bat. They decided to bring it back for season 26, and that was also a success. So I think what we're trying to do here is kind of copy that success when it comes to having fans of the game go up against favorites of the game. So to give you an idea of what production was thinking when they decided to cast the favorites, is they came up with 18 favorites who ranked highly on the fan favorite poll for their respective seasons, and then put them on a ballot. And then they gave that ballot to the alumni and spectators of the community, and then had them vote on who they wanted to represent the favorites tribe for the season. So I think it's really cool how they tried to get the audience and the alumni involved in the casting process for the favorites tribe. Bandit, do you care to expand on that at all?
No, I think you've pretty much got it covered.
All right, so that's kind of about the theme. So once the ballot went out, of the 18, 10 were selected, and we now have our 10 favorites that are going to be on the season. And let me just tell you, this favorites tribe is going to be stacked. We have a lot of high hopes for them. They were chosen by their peers, and they are going to do very, very well. I think we can see, based off of their prior experiences and their prior games, that this is going to be a strong tribe to go up against. So without further ado, let's go into the favorites cast assessments, and I'm going to hand it over to Bandit.
Okay, so I have little write-ups for each of the 10 players that we've gotten to play here again. So starting with Allison, who was our third placer from last season, season 9. She got to the finale and she didn't actually get any votes, which usually doesn't tend to be the kind of player you see as a favorite. That usually comes off as a GOAT. But it's just the quality of season 9 that Allison was actually a good player and just simply managed to fly a little too under the radar for people to recognize her in a finale with such great competition. She's coming into the season with a really, really low threat level in comparison to most of the others. And I think there's a lot of really good bonds she can make on this tribe with people like B, maybe Brittany, maybe even Jayla. So I think there's a lot of potential for Allison here. Moving on to Aria, who was our fallen angel from season 1, 4th place. So from all the way back in season 1, Aria was still remembered and recognized enough in this community to be able to make it through the ballot into the season, which is saying a lot. And she was really impressive in season 1. She played a very strong under-the-radar game, and I think she would have won if she hadn't lost fire making at Final 4 against Tyler. I think she just would have won the season. So I think she's kind of similar to Allison, a little more under the radar, but I'm not sure that she performs quite as well, considering I just think Allison will be able to make better connections. I think Allison is socially stronger. Okay, next we have B, our fallen angel from season 5, just like Aria. So B's pretty similar to Aria in the statistics. But when you actually look at B as a player, she's a lot different. She's a lot more socially inclined. B's very likable. Everybody loves her. And I think that's going to play very well for her this season, probably making another run into the merge. But unfortunately, I see her threat level being a little too high for her to truly make the end of the game. Okay, moving on to Bradley, our first person on this list who didn't place super high, coming 13th in Season 8. I'm pretty close with Bradley, and I think he has a pretty good chance going into the season. He didn't place very well in his original season, but he still played well, going out, getting swap screwed in essence. So I think he is going to be able to perform a lot better this time, just if he isn't unlucky. Simple as that. He's pretty strong socially and just overall, really. Next, we have Brittany, who came 4th in Season 7. Brittany was literally immune for half of her season, including the first 6 tribal councils. I don't think anybody else could possibly do that. It's astounding. Even through all of that, just being immune, not having to go to tribal council, she still formed strong social bonds and was able to maneuver very well throughout the merge, where she unfortunately went out at Final Four like so many others we're seeing on this list. She seems similar to Allison in that she's going to be able to make a lot of social connections with a lot of the other females on this tribe, and I think she's going to have a pretty decent run once again. Next we have Jayla, who came 15th in Season 7, the lowest placing player to make it through the ballot. Jayla is pretty much exactly who you'd expect to come into Fan vs. Favorites. A little bit over the top, with a lot of exciting gameplay, and just flamed out, really. Unfortunately, I expect her to do something fairly similar. I don't really see her picking up her game to the extent she'll need to with a cast this stacked. I think she's socially capable, but I don't think she's strategically capable, and she kind of lets her emotions get ahead of her sometimes. Next we have John, who came 4th in Season 8. John was my winner pick from that season when I did my cast analysis, and I stand by that he was the best player to pick to win the season. John did very well. He came 4th, and he just couldn't win challenges. That was his only downfall. He played incredibly socially and strategically, as I expected, and he was the biggest threat going into Final Four. I really hope that he can pull out the win this time, but I don't see it happening, unfortunately. He possibly has the biggest target on his back of anyone in this cast, and I really just see his threat level being impossible to maneuver, with it just being so high from his last time playing. Next we had Tay, who came 13th in Season 2, and is also usually on production. Tay was the literal only reason I watched any of Season 2. Tay was very fun to watch. He made great confessionals, and I'm really hoping he can get a little bit better for performance this time. Tay's downfall was really unpredictable in his first season. I don't really think I could blame it on him, and I'm hoping we can see him surpass that this time and just be able to excel as I know he can. Next we have Travis, who came 13th in Season 4. Travis is a great guy, but I think this season is not for him. He's another one of the good 13th placers that we see oddly frequently in Essential, but I think his 13th place is more justified than the others. He's a little bit over the top sometimes. He's a little bit emotional sometimes. Kind of similar to Jayla, really. I just don't see him making a deep run in this tribe. I think he'll struggle making connections with the 8 I've already talked about, and I don't really see that working out too well for him. And finally, we have Will, who came 8th in Season 1, another Season 1 rep, which was very surprising to see. Will was probably the one person that I would have said confidently going into voting that he would not get enough votes. But here he is. He got enough votes. And unfortunately, I see him playing out very similarly to Travis. I think he's a little bit over the top, a little bit emotional, maybe even a little bit too controlling. And I just don't see that going well with this tribe of very well-rounded players. So unfortunately, I see him falling similarly to Travis.
All right, that is our favorites tribe. As Bandit said, we can expect very high things when it comes to this tribe. They have so much potential and they have such watchability when it comes to them as a whole. I can't wait to see what they have to bring and see if the fans will be able to keep up. So, with that being said, let's move on to our fans tribe. Before we get to the assessment part, let's go over a little bit what we were looking for when it came to who was going to get cast for the fans. So, we had over 30 applications for only 10 spots. And I think what we were really looking for, at least on the casting side, is we wanted people who were actually fans of the show, people who had been here for a few seasons, people who understand how Essential works, know what to expect, and aren't just going to go in blindly. And I think that casting as a whole did a great job of adding those people into the mixture when it came to the fans tribe. So I'm going to pass it over to Kim to now give the assessment of what we can expect from these newbies.
Okay, so when I was looking through these fans, all I could think of was how stacked they were. So I'm really excited to talk about them. But let's go over probably one of the biggest fans here first, and that is Omakin. Omakin, from what I've seen and what from others have seen, is a pretty emotional player. He likes to play with his hearts on his sleeves, and from other seasons, it kind of gets to him, which is a bit of a worry, but is also really good for entertainment. Um, so I actually am pretty excited to see Omakin on the cast, and I'm here to see what he's gonna do and what he has to bring, or if the game's gonna get to him and he's gonna flame out and it's just gonna be a whole Survivor situation again. I really hope not, but there's definitely gonna be some high hopes for Oma, and I'm really excited to see him play. Also, a big fan, somebody that was almost guaranteed a lock is Mark. Mark had applied for four times now. He was rejected 3 times. But based on other games that I've seen Mark play, and even though I know Mark personally, I just know that he's a good player, and I know he has the potential of making it far and making really good moves to get him all the way to finale. I'm really excited to see Mark in this cast and see what he has to bring to the table. But now more on to people that don't really have much of that hype because they weren't here for that long. But I'm gonna go on to Matthew, who I'm hella excited to see. He just seems like a really, really good player, and he's already like calculating by like doing like a cast assessments. When the faves were shown, he was going over who he thinks would be the best options to go against, which was just smart and just shows that he is planning for this and he's a big fan and he's ready to do this. And I'm just excited to see what he has to bring to the table and what he has to offer. I think he has the potential of making it go far. I think he's really stacked for this cast. And Matthew just seems like a really cool dude, but like also very calculated and very smart. He seems like a huge threat. With Kip, Kip is um someone that I see almost like a Brandon from season 2 of Essential. Kip is pretty well rounded. I think Kip is pretty much has a lot to go in. I'm gonna say that a lot because this cast is pretty stacked. Kip is a real big threat when it comes to winning. Like he marks the social criteria almost completely. He seems he follows what Brandon can do, and he looks like he can play a pretty mean under the radar game. Because I don't think much people are going to see Kip as a real big threat to win when they're on there, but I think he's gonna really pull it through. Next on to Kristen. Kristen is somebody who I see as very bubbly, very someone that you can get along with, very social, and I can definitely see her making it go through far. I can see her making connections almost like Cam, um, just by being nice and all that, like a B situation. She's somebody that I don't necessarily have high hopes for, but I definitely see how she can make it far. I just think Kristen's a good player socially, and I think she's gonna mark the social spot amazingly. I really do see potential in her. When we move on to Oscar, this one it gets a bit interesting. Oscar definitely has it, but the thing is, he has a dislike for Oma going into this, and I can definitely see it affecting the game. I don't know how emotional he is when he plays, but from his interview, he looks pretty emotional. And if that gets in the way of the game, it could be a big downfall for him. But other than that, he looks really well put together in other aspects of the game. Like he looks things out, leaves his options open, and that's always a good thing to do as a player. Next up, we have Cole. Cole is someone I definitely see going far. From the fans, the person I see the most going far is Cole. I think Cole is the perfect example of someone that can be a big threat without being seen as a big threat. He's just a pretty likable guy, and it's pretty easy to trust him from what I've heard. Like it's pretty easy just to eat right out of his hand. He seems like a very strategic social player, and it's gonna be like hard. It I think he's gonna play very hard. Okay, next up is Carmen. Carmen is somebody that I'm actually very personally excited to see play. I feel like they are gonna be very entertaining. I feel like they are gonna pull a bunch of good like stunts that are just gonna be very fun to watch. They also talked about how they are very into confessionals, so I think they're gonna be one of the most active there. So I'm excited to see what they put out. I'm excited to see what they try to do. I'm excited to see what they pull off. I am just very excited to see Carmen play because Carmen looks very entertaining and they look like they're gonna be a real big threat. Next up is Despair. Despair is somebody that's like really well put together and really sees things out again. I feel like Despair really keeps an open mind, and that's one of the most important things as an org player is they keep it out, they keep it real, but they keep things to themselves. And I see Despair doing that so much, but they also are a pretty good social player. There's a lot of good social players on the fans tribe, I'd say, and Despair is probably near the top of the list, in my opinion. They seem very strategic and very like background character that doesn't fade too much to where you just vote them out. So I have some pretty high hopes for Despair going into this. And lastly, for the fans, we're talking about Jalen. Jalen is a pretty good person. They seem entertaining. They seem really well. Talk about the outer onion strategy, which I personally really love hearing from applicants. It talks about like how they're quiet and reserved and they build up, and that's always exciting to see. And if they can manage to pull that off, then they can definitely make it very deep into this game, which I'm all for, and I'm very excited to see what Jalen brings to the table. But with that said, that's all I have to say about the fans, and I'm gonna move it back to Miss Jessica.
All right, thank you, Kim. So as you can tell, we have such high hopes for this fans cast. They're going to be pinned up against some really intense favorites, and I'm really excited to see what's going to happen and who's going to come out on top. So with that being said, let's get into some bold predictions for the season. So I'm going to ask a question, and I would like each of you to kind of give me what you think is going to happen with a little explanation. You don't have to name any names if you don't want to, only if you're feeling bold. So the first question is, which tribe do you think is going to start out hot? Like basically, which tribe is not going to go to tribal council first? Let's start with Bandit.
I think the Faves have too many challenge beasts, honestly. I don't think they go to first tribal. Between B, Arya, Brittany, like there's a lot of challenge players here. So I don't think they go first tribal.
All right. Interesting. What about you, Kim?
I agree with Bandit that the faves are gonna take it because the fans just look like a lot of social players, and when it comes to physical type of challenges, I definitely just see like the faves dominating in that aspect. So I think that they're gonna start it off well. And it really depends on what you see as the number. I feel like the faves are cast people because there are some pretty big names on that tribe, so I think the little names and the big names might like separate themselves and start outcasting each other, and a numbers disadvantage because some of the faves will want to flip when it comes to merge. So
A little more how you expected. I think that merge specifically, I think the fans will probably have a little more momentum going. I think the faves are gonna get chipped at a lot at swap. Like Kim was saying, they're not all going to be on the same side. And with swap, some of them are gonna flip to the fans like split of that tribe, and both sides are going to weaken the favorites numbers. I think there's going to be more fans at the merge.
Once again, I think I'm going to have to disagree with you there. I think the favorites are going to lose the first tribal, but then I think they're going to get it together. They're going to be able to win more immunities and come out with a numbers advantage come the merge. Now, what happens after the merge, depending who's left, I couldn't tell you. I don't even want to try to predict what the merge is going to be like. I'm sure it's going to be crazy, but very entertaining. So the last question I have for our bold predictions is, who do you think is going to take home the title of Soul Survivor? A fan or a favorite? Bandit?
It's got to be a fan. Every fans versus favorites season, the main favorite threats get chipped away once you're a little bit into merge. They never can get to the end because they're just so much higher of a threat level, having a whole other season of expertise before and being good enough in that season to make it to this season. They can never make it to the end. Their threat levels are just too high. I realistically only see a fan winning.
Interesting. What about you, Kim?
I really have to piggyback off Bandit right there because I do see a fan getting it through there just because of the threat level. I feel like the favorites are just gonna have a difficult time trying to keep that under control, and the fans just have so much more to prove, and they're gonna have more to and they have more room to hide. So I feel like they're definitely gonna take this to their advantage, and I definitely see a fan winning this.
I actually agree. I do think that a fan is going to win. I've seen half vet, half newbie seasons where a fan has won, and then I've also seen where a newbie has won. So anything is possible, but I do see a fan coming out on top for this season. So we shall see in about 6 weeks' time. So that is going to do it for our preseason podcast. Before we close up, I just kind of want to give you guys an idea of what to expect coming up. So, our goal is not to have very many pre recorded podcasts. We really want to do these live so we can get as much participation and involvement as possible. So, be on the lookout for announcements that will let you know when we will be doing the podcast and what time. And also be on the lookout for special guests. We're planning on having some of the production team, maybe even a player or two that get out pre-merge to be a part of the podcast and answer all the questions that you guys have. But we have a lot of exciting things. We're super excited to see what's going to happen. This is going to be a stacked season with lots of entertainment, and we have such high hopes for it. But that is going to do it for our preseason podcast, and we'll see you soon.